Hi, and welcome to this week's The Mortgage Broker broadcast. My guest this week is Ross McMillan, and Ross has been on the podcast before a couple of times back in September 2021, so nearly 5 years ago now, also as well in May 2023. But I wanted to get Ross onto the podcast to talk about what I've been sort of alluding to over the past few weeks on the podcast, which is about the Fear Academy. So I wanted to get Ross onto the podcast to talk about that. So for those that don't know already, I have set up Fear Financial, which is a network of appointed representatives. But what we wanted to do, done that with Lee Rowland, and now Ross is involved as well. And what I wanted to do, we've got the appointed representatives set up. We're slowly growing those, and yeah, sort of seeing the network grow. But what we're also looking to do, and what we're now doing, is set up an academy. So for mortgage brokers that are totally new into the industry, CeMAP in hand, but looking for somewhere where they can set up, be supported, sort of share the values of the network, share the culture of the network, but ultimately looking to become an appointed representative long term. The whole point of the academy is to do that. So if you're totally new into the industry, long term looking to become an appointed representative, we can offer that within Fair Financial. So and Ross on the podcast, because what Ross is doing is heading up the academy. Lee and I are involved with it, but Ross is heading up the academy. And I wanted to get him to talk about it, what exactly it is, why it's set up, the benefits, and how you get involved. And yeah, let's just get Ross onto the podcast. So, welcome back onto the podcast, Ross. How are you?
I am astonishing, Craig. How are you?
Good. Yeah. Astonishing is a good word to start this Wednesday morning when the podcast goes out. So yeah, astonishing halfway through the week. But yeah, really good. And thanks for agreeing to come back on. We had a quick chat before I hit record and just looking at you have been on the past podcast a couple of times before, but I didn't realize how long ago it was when you were on the podcast. So we just celebrated, like as I've sort of said in the intro in a bit, we've celebrating 5 years of the podcast. So the Mortgage Broker broadcast has been out for 5 years. Were one of the first guests back in September 2021, and then back on in May 23. And then we've not had you back on since. So it's a sort of a welcome back.
Yeah, no, it is. No, it's astonishing. It's astonishing to think it was that long that I first chatted to you, and a lot's happened since then. And then again, even though it was just 3 years since the last time we did the podcast. Obviously, I do chat to you in other times. We don't record every conversation we have, fortunately. But yeah, a lot happened. But yeah, time certainly flies, and exciting times. But it's yeah,
Exactly.
it's interesting. Yeah, how quickly time flies when you really have no concept of it. And we were just chatting as well that we're a quarter through the year already, and it feels like the year's barely started. It's just time. Time is an interesting thing, but particularly when you get
So,
to our age.
certainly, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm glad you said our age. So
I
yeah.
know I was being polite. I was being polite there. But I thought I should.
Yeah, I don't think I'll ever forget. I'll ever be forget that I am slightly older than you. So, so fair enough. Fair
Just
enough.
slightly. Slightly.
For those people that haven't gone back and listened to, well, if they do want to go back and have a sort of see how you was sort of 5 years ago, 3 years ago, then go back to sort of 8th of September 2021 and then 11th of May 2023. But for those people that haven't listened to that, do you want to do a brief introduction, Ross?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I will try and keep it brief. I guess in a nutshell, I've been more than 2 decades involved in kind of property in general. I was an estate agent for roughly 15, 16 years up in Glasgow, and then made the decision to switch across into financial services and specifically mortgage advice. 2019, my goodness. Yeah, so nearly 7 years ago, which again seems like yesterday. And certainly no regrets about that. Originally was operating under another firm without my own branding and whatever, and then moved across to work with yourself and develop my own brand, my own company, Bluefish Mortgage Solutions, which has gone very well and has been a great move. And I made that initial move to have more control over my marketing and things, and that's a big part of what I do now. That I get control of how my business operates in pretty much every way. And now coming up for 15 months, moved across from a network into and directly authorised under well, sorry, appointed representative under a different network. but directly authorised rather than one of the big corporate networks. And that's been a great move as well, which just gives a bit more freedom for the business. But yeah, that's it. Yeah, so nearly 7 years in mortgage advice, which just blows my mind to be honest. Hadn't even thought about that. Don't get time to think about it. But yeah, great move, and the industry is always changing. There's always opportunity within it, and I guess that's part of what we're going to chat about now as well. So,
Yeah, exactly. No, I think, like I say, it is. I think it's just important to. It's quite a good thing when we talked about time to sort of put that into a bit of perspective. That, like you said, we've already the first quarter of the year is already done, and there'll be people out there that talk about the procrastination, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that, and I'll do this, that, when, and I'll do this then, and all, and then lo and behold, we're already the first quarter of the month into the year and starting into the second quarter, which is doesn't show any sort of sign of letting up in terms of the what mortgage brokers are dealing with right now and how that sort of speeds up time in terms of the chaos that we're working with. But yeah, I think it puts it into perspective in terms of what, because thanks for coming back on the podcast. The reason why I wanted to get back on, I did a bit of introduction before, but I just want to get the main body of the podcast was that you have been there. You've moved across from estate agency sort of 6, 7 years ago, got into mortgage broking, got under working for somebody else, and then you quickly realise in terms of your own brand, your own business, which has then ultimately become your own business. So you have experienced what a lot of people are looking to experience or would want to pursue over the coming months, the coming years. And I think it was just quite we had a chat about sort of how that can sort of what you can sort of have some effect in terms of what the network is doing in terms of fear. So obviously you're an appointed representative, as you've said, but getting a bit more involved in a lot more things with what we're doing within the network. And it just seemed quite fitting that you your background, you have managed, you have led, you have done all those kind of things in different guises in under different industries, but and that you'll never lose that ability and lose that skill to lead and to develop and mentor people. And I think you just felt like we discussed in terms of looking at. I have quite a few discussions with brokers that are looking to get in the industry, sort of trying to understand what the right path is, with the right direction, what the right network is, what the right firm is, where does that look? And I just thought, as with everything, let's look at how we can bring this together, and obviously with Lee as well in terms of because Lee was on the podcast a few weeks ago talking about what created at Fear, and looking then at how that fits in with regards to the not just the appointed representatives that we brought on board, not the appointed representatives that have come as part of it and still coming on board now, but more of the brokers that have never sold before, CeMAP in hand or qualification in hand, and thinking, what do we do now? It's then sort of fitting that we wanted to have a chat just to really explain quite different to the normal podcast in terms of interviewing, like with a normally an 80-20 rule where I'll talk 20% of the time and you're talking 80% of the time. We're probably going to switch that up a little bit because we're going to talk a lot about what we're both doing with regards to the academy. But I wanted to get a bit of for those people that are listening, thinking, I want to get into the industry. I don't know where to start. I've just been qualified. What do I do? I think this is sort of fitting really to explain exactly what the Fear Academy is all around. You've created this sort of an amazing sort of like 6 month program around development. You understanding what the key points with that. Obviously, we work together on these sort of things, but you've really taken this forward with regards to the whole workbook, the whole program timeline, everything else. So yeah, I think so. Waffled a little bit there, but in terms
yeah.
of what exactly, so when we talk about the academy within Fear that you're heading up and you're leading and and you're developing, why what why was that created?
Well, why is the really key point? I think everybody's got different businesses, and as businesses grow, and as I say, I'm now 6 or 7 years into this and growing my own brand and all the rest of it. But I've never had a desire to have other advisors. I've always kind of wanted it for personal reasons, just to be me, and that was always my objective. But what I've also recognised is that, and I think the industry as a whole can be good at this, is supporting other advisors. I've always tried to do that, give them ideas, but for no benefit as such to myself, just to share my knowledge. And I think it's a great industry for that. And then just moving forward, because I've done walk the walk, if you like, I've started from nothing in that respect with no industry background as such to now have my own brand, my own business, which was really important to me to have that control. Then the academy was just a kind of natural progression to help people do what I've done and guide them through that whole process. But in a practical way, there's obviously different opportunities out there for how people can come into the industry in different formats. But the key point, I think, or the differential for the academy is, yes, there's the compliance side of things, and obviously that's important and that's covered. Every network will do that, and I would say the networks in general or the corporates are good at the compliance side of things, and this is what you need to do to be compliant. But compliance is just one part of the the business. Where I think I can add benefit, and what the academy is designed to do is to actually, how do you practically apply the compliance element of things, but specifically the knowledge that you need to build a business, to deal with clients, to actually give advice, practical advice within those frameworks, how to generate leads, how practically to conduct a fact find with a client, not in a obviously in a compliant way, but in a more realistic way, is like, this is real life, this is what happens, and then what actually happens when you've had that conversation with the client, what's the follow-up process, practically what's the follow-up process, and then once you're getting documents and so forth in, how are you actually facilitating that onto a CRM system or whatever system you're using? How are you then sourcing for that client, researching, checking affordability? How are you registering with lenders? How are you dealing with lender BDMs? How do you get from the fact find position or the lead coming in to actually submitting a mortgage, dealing with the full process through to completion with protection, all of these things. And there's so much more to it beyond, yes, establish somebody's budget, check their pay slips are okay, and see what the best rate is potentially. I mean, how do you even do that? Simple things like that, which I've certainly seen. There's a lot of training as such from networks, but it's not actually on the practicalities. It's more on the regulatory side of things and ticking boxes to some extent in order to get you to a certain position. But they're not actually showing, well, how do you source? How do you, yes, you might be looking on a cost basis, but there's nuance to that as well, and the criteria comes in. How does that all fit? So the academy is designed, and that's a lot of things, and it's not even touched the size of what actually is within the academy in terms of the modules and things that we have within the initial 12-week period is designed to really get the foundations for people to be able to understand what it's actually like to do the job, rather than to get CeMAP, which is a completely different objective. It's a completely different training thing, is to obtain an exam. And likewise with the compliance side of things, that's obviously vital, but it's not really practically telling you how to do the job. And that's the key point, is like to help people from the outset understand it, rather than potentially floundering themselves whilst trying to develop their own brand, get their head round what is a complex process within the mortgage world of advice. Just, I say, floundering or trying to do it themselves, and not knowing what's right, what's wrong, having hesitancy about all that. The academy is there to give you the framework for that, but also to be there, myself personally, having been through it all, as a sounding board, and also to directly answer the questions without any. I think sometimes within networks, and it's not to have a dig at the corporate networks or indeed the corporate world, people are occasionally might be fearful of asking questions, and the consequences of perhaps indicating they don't know what they're doing. And I don't mean that, and that sounds quite bad, but just they're fearful of asking questions, basically, when they're not
Yeah.
sure. And the whole point of the academy is to help and support people to get beyond that phase. And there'll come a point where, well, to be frank, I'm 7 years, there's people in it longer than me that are still asking questions about
Yeah.
certainly specific cases, and it's always changing. But the actual, like, asking, like, how do I actually source? How do I find what's the best mortgage? What am I taking into consideration? None of that is really covered in my experience, in a kind of kind of formal network or corporate world. So
No,
that's what we're trying to do here,
and I think that's a
in a
really
rather large nutshell.
no. And to be fair, Ross, I would like writing down notes there in terms of sort of things I wanted to pick up what you sort of talked about because that's sort of you you've given us that sort of overview of and the reasons why this has sort of been sort of created. I think the differentiating thing is between you're right. There is no real changes within the large corporate networks. I see a lot of support, what they class as support, what they class as help, what they but that's not really from somebody who's doing it generally. It's generally so it's just so it's not somebody that's actually been that new person in the industry and not had that experience of that rabbit in the headlights of like, okay, I've got my first appointment now. What does that look like? How do I look and things like that, which I'll come back to in a second. The overlying thing with all this, which I wanted to cover first of all, is that you are not an employee. I am not an employee. We are self-employed people. And you have either people that, so somebody new into the industry, this is like the academy, the whole thing is for self-employed people. We do not employ people. Like it's a self-employed people that want to have the flexibility, the freedom, all the benefits of self-employment with the support there as well. So you and I, the way that we think is a self-employed is hard it's I'm not going to define it on the podcast because it would take too long, but we have a self-employed mindset. We have been self-employed for a number of years. We understand the difference between the two because we've been both been employed in the corporate world. We're now being self-employed for quite a number of years and are now unemployable, but for the right reasons we're unemployable. When you've got your CMAP, you're thinking, what do I do now? Ultimately, you want to be self-employed and have your own brand and your own business. You need to be talking to people that have walked that walk and gone down that path. If you sort of turn to the corporates who and the recruitment people of the corporates, like I said, this is very generic in terms of my experience with the corporates, in terms of the recruits, in terms of the people that offer help and support, they are employees. They've got an employee mindset. They're not self-employed. They have not gone through what you're trying to go through, prepared to go through, and experience that. And I don't think you can ever underestimate the power of talking to somebody who has been through what you're and have those feelings of how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to pay my rent? What does this look like? And all those kind of things. Because if you're talking about help and support as an employee of a corporate network or a corporate business or whatever, you're going to have a very different mindset because the last working day or close to the end of the month, you're going to have some money dropped in your bank account. And really, that doesn't matter whether you're helping somebody or not. That's going to happen anyway. Ultimately, you might get found out, but you're still going to get paid. Whereas you and I both had the experience of if I know to do something right now, how am I going to pay my mortgage? If I don't take action, have impact, and yeah, take action with my business right now, there's going to be no income by the end of the month. And how am I going to pay my outgoings? So I think that's a very different mindset. So that's the thing that's sort of wrapped around all this is forget the month one, month three, month 12 for month for a second. It's like-minded mindsets, like-minded individuals. Can't get my words out today. Like-minded individuals who have been through what you're about to go through. So you're stood at the edge of the cliff for want of better word. We've all jumped, we've all done that and experienced it and realized actually it's not that bad after all. So I think don't ever we can't ever underestimate the actual what support looks like because it is from people that have experienced it. And I think then, like I say, it is that very much around this is the compliance and all the things we talk about are very, very compliant, but it's what happens after that or what happens around that when you've having that when you're sat in that first appointment, your first appointment as a mortgage broker, and you don't feel supported, you don't know who you can pick up the phone to, you do not know where you're going to go with the end of conversation. All those questions that the client's throwing at you that will happen. And if you don't think, if you've got two aspects of it. You've got the case of I'm sat here as a mortgage broker with my first appointment. Ross has prepped me. Ross knows what I'm going to go through. Ross knows that sort of questions that clients are going to ask. But at the end of it, that's important. But at the end of it, I know that I can pick up the phone to Ross or speak to Craig and and say, where do I go now? And I think that's a real powerful thing from when you're dealing with clients, because if you've not got that help and support, and you don't at the end of that conversation, all those things that the client's going to throw at you are just adding on to the mountain of I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. And so if they're asking all these questions, you've got no idea where you're going to go at the end of the meeting to then find the answers to those questions. You subconsciously you're going to show to that client you've not got a clue what you're doing. Whereas if you know that at the end of it, you've got Ross to speak to and go, Ross, Ross is there for me. He's my bit of a wingman, and I know that I can ask all the questions that the client's throwing at me. As long as I've got them all documented down, I've got something to turn to. And I think that's a massive thing when you're first starting out.
No, for sure. I think that the key word, I'm not sure you did use it, but it's certainly what I'm taking from it is confidence. So it's support, of course, but it's with the objective of giving people confidence in what they're doing in terms of the role, but also to overcome the hurdles that do happen, and that have confidence that, in my case, there's been certainly lots of hurdles and things that I've not maybe been able to deal with at that particular stage, but I have now, and you just learn all the time from all that. And it's once you start to, the more you do it, the more confident you become in it. But it is about having that support network there to portray confidence, even if it's not necessarily there yet. It's just knowing that you've got those foundations there. I mean, that is the key to it. The first kind of 12 weeks of the academy is the foundation phase, if you want to call it that. And it's not as formal as anything like that, but it is to build that support network beneath a person, the pillars that they need to know, like how do you practically do things, how do you maybe deal with this situation, this kind of question, where do you go to for um, advice when you need it, and have that solid base to then be building their businesses, whilst again continuing to have the compliance side going alongside it. That's it's really important that those two go hand in hand, but it is about building confidence in every element of running your own business. And I think when people are coming to, we are looking for people who are want to build their own business
Hmm.
for all sorts of reasons, and there has to be a level of confidence to do that in the first place. And but I think it's important that that's matched with a structure that will then nurture that, to allow people to actually move forward with confidence with their plans and have faith that there is going to be support there to go through it. And well, in my case, I'm an example of it. So I've done it. I mean, there was no academy or anything like that. I've, in some respects, self-taught, but I've had the support of certainly yourself, Craig, in the business element of things. But and that's there within the academy as well, and with other ARs that we work with. But it's the foundations, the fundamentals of actually doing the job practically
Hmm.
that I don't think anybody's delivering that in a practical sense. As I say, there's compliance, fair enough. There's box ticking. There's compliance role plays and stuff, but that's not real world. And I get the
No.
point of them and I understand why they're there, but that's not dealing with the day to day as to what's actually involved and how do you deal with what you encounter every single day. So yeah, confidence and building confidence is a key part of the academy for sure.
Absolutely. No, I think, like you said, I don't know if I did use that word, but it is the key word throughout all this. So we'll at the end of the podcast, we'll talk about the like how you start the journey and sort of thing. So let's get on to the initial 12 weeks, and what does that look like in terms of timeline? Is that quite rigid? Is it bespoke? What sort of built into that? How do I work with you if like within the first sort of 12 weeks? Do you want to sort of like give us a bit of a run through in terms of those sort of first
Sure,
three
yeah.
months?
Well, we've developed, I think it's 12 modules overall, which are designed to take place over a 12-week period. Now, not necessarily in a rigid order, and I think that's something that we've always, both you and I, have been keen to emphasise. It's not a box ticking like we go through week one and we get, and then you do week two and then you do week three or whatever, or module three, and we've deliberately called them modules rather than weeks within the kind of academy workbook that we've designed, um, because different people will have different needs within that, and we totally recognise that. And it isn't a formulaic thing. It's a joint partnership, I suppose, with the person coming on board to like, what's your priority right now at this stage? What do you want to know right now? And let's deal with that. Now, over the course of the 12 weeks, everything will be covered, but not necessarily in a rigid order. And we've been really keen to emphasise that it is to the needs of the person coming in, what their specific support needs. And some of that's practical, some of it, as I've touched on a few times, is just basic. How do you register with a lender? How do you use our CRM system? How do you get it on there? How do you source? How all of that's all carried within it. And then there's elements in relation to lead generation, marketing, visibility, um, some, I suppose you call it kind of business acumen as well, just looking at the finances a little bit and just different ways that how to manage that in the early stages as well, which is a practical point for anybody coming into a new business, and having realistic expectations about that. But again, seeing how that can flow, and that's something that I've certainly got frameworks with I've had from the outset. I can show people the pattern of how my business has developed in some detail so they can see that, and that's just a tool that we'll have to demonstrate, like, this is how my business, this is where it is now and this is where it started. You just need to have this consistency to have that growth. But again, the benefit of my position within this is I have done it and I'm still doing it. So that's key. So, I mean, I wouldn't run through all the modules, but there are 12 of them. Diary management, practical things as well, like actually managing the cases. I think that, and this is getting quite logistical, I suppose, but you submit the application, you think happy days, but what happens next? How are you actually monitoring the progress of that mortgage application? How are you dealing with underwriters, which can be an interesting process at times? How does that all work? All of that is covered in the first 12 weeks of the academy. And then beyond that, the second stage, if you like, months kind of 3 to 6, is when we've hopefully got the foundations set pretty solid. I certainly don't disappear. So certainly the first 3 months of anybody coming to the academy is going to be heavy me, so to speak, in terms of the practicalities, and always there as a support for people throughout that process beyond that. But the secondary, the kind of 3 to 6 months, is then going to start more on when you come in more involved, Craig. I guess that's more about developing the business even further, and with a sort of slightly different, not mindset, but just a different view at things, not so much on the tools, so to speak, and more kind of working on the business rather than in it. But the as I say, the practicalities I'm always here to help with, and indeed the business growth. But we're splitting up the load to some extent on the academy, or the expertise, if you like. Obviously, you no longer advise and haven't for a wee while, whereas I'm on that day to day. So clearly, that's a strength of mine. So
Yeah.
um, so there's a lot in it, and as I say, there's no point going through every single module. But the key point is there's flexibility within that framework to operate how people need, what support they need, what their priority is, and where they're coming from, I suppose.
I think that's a good point, is in terms of the aspect of that we've the modules are there, we've got the program in terms of over a sort of 6 months and beyond from that point of view. However, the individuals have got the best of both worlds. You're right, I've not advised for quite some time. So it's a case of using your expertise and your knowledge with regards to advising the day-to-day stuff in terms of that aspect of it. But then the beauty of that is that we're both involved with regards to the whole program. So it's a case of the individual will be working with us for a long period of time. It's not like, even though we've got this program, the 3 months, 12 months, and the rest of it, the idea is that you will become an appointed representative of the network, and that's the place you will want to trade your business for the rest of however long you want to trade it for. So it's not, so I think, but then you've got aspects of both of us interacting during that whole thing. So again, the first 3 months is very much around, they have the weekly sessions with you. So they've got the 90-minute weekly sessions where they've they will be heard. They've got that time booked in the diary. They've got, you can answer all their questions. So that's the sort of the first 3 months, and then after that, it's then more of a monthly thing with me and the interactions with me. But I think it's sort of like, it is very much around what you sort of said there, was it's about what they want. Everybody's very different. Everybody's very different in terms of what they're starting out as a mortgage broker. They're starting out day one as a mortgage broker, and they know what they want. They know they want to be an appointed representative and have their own business. That's perfect. That's exactly how we sit. It's all the things in between that actually is quite fluid. Is quite. They will have things that will. They will be. I'm saying that you will have things you'll be worrying about in day one, and some of the people will be thinking very differently and having different worries and things like that. So the modules are very fluid in terms of, we clearly display them. These are the bits that we're going to pick up. But if you want to pick up X in week one and this in week two, and you can then sort of pick the bits out and go, right, okay, that's what I want to do. Is we're not forcing you to sort of say, right, this is what. So you've still got quite a lot of. I think the beauty of that is, like, you've got ownership yourself, because this is the whole point of this, is we want you to take ownership of your own development and your own learning, because ultimately you're going to have your own business and nobody's going to do that for you. So you've got a lot of ownership within this anyway. So if we can instill that ownership from day one by you picking up the modules and sort of saying, okay, this is what I want to do now, this one to pick up, whether it's sort of sourcing, protection, that, like, whatever that case, whatever that situation might be. And we will help and guide you, because you don't know what you don't know, and you might want some help and guidance with regards to processing and a bit of a path of learning and things that come about. But ultimately, you're still responsible for your own learning, which is quite different to other things out there that I've seen, particularly when you're sort of starting out, because you're self-employed, you want to be a business owner, you want to create that legacy, so you've got the longevity within this. We want to make sure that you're not stifled and you are able to do that, but in a very, very supported environment.
Yeah, no, that all of that. The key is to establish worthwhile businesses for people to run. That's what they're looking for, and that can seem daunting. It can certainly seem daunting if you're starting from scratch, knowing nothing. But when there's people round about that are there to support, and I think the academy is an important part of it, but within the network as a whole, like for your network, we've got other ARs who are at different stages in their different businesses as well. So it's quite possible that people coming into the academy might, unlike myself, they might want to be bringing on other advisors in future into the firm. They might have other ambitions beyond what my business looks like, and that's the beauty of the network, and be encountering accommodating different things. But you need to start somewhere. But then once you're getting beyond that and you've got your full AR status, if you want to call it that, then there's others within the network, again, happy to share how they're building their businesses. And again, that Craig, yourself, obviously that's one of your major strengths, is being able to help people in different business paths, if you like, however they want their brokerage to look like, which, as I say, wouldn't necessarily be mine. So there'll be different things that people can learn. So it's a long-term learning, if you like, but it's a long-term support network to get people where they want to be. And the first 6 months are kind of, they're the foundations. I'm going to say it again. It is the
Yeah.
foundations of a long-term business, not just a tick box exercise. And I suppose that's it. There's no big ceremony at the end of 6 months or 3 months or whatever it is. I mean, we've mentioned that time frame, but there's no, like, you get a certificate and you're happy
Yeah.
days. It's not about that, nor does it suddenly the support stops after 6 months or
Yeah.
3 months, whatever. I think that's a key point to make as well, that this is a long running relationship, I suppose, we're looking at. But
Mm.
within that, there is structure to get people where they need to do, and hopefully, need to be, sorry, and hopefully answering uh, what they what they need to know at the right time in that
Yeah.
process.
I think that's it, like you don't ever underestimate the culture that we have within the network with regards to the support of other ARs as well, because everybody does help each other out. We've got group WhatsApp chats. We have a group session every single month, which is led by all the ARs, people sharing what they've experienced, what's worked, what's not worked. People are free to ask questions to it. There's no competition within, there's no sort of annual and award ceremony, sort of saying the top AR of the year is this, and like like whether you are like you're a sole trader who just wants to be that case, always be that way, and happy doing what you're doing, and or you looking to recruit and grow and want to have sort of 10 advisors under your AR, like you. Everybody's treated the same. Everybody feels the same. It's sort of like there's no, like I said, you're not in competition with each other. It's a very much around the abundance mindset that we've had, like, since, and I know sort of Lee has that abundance mindset as you and I do with regards to this whole thing, that there is enough business out there for all of us to sort of for it to go around. So, and I think once you feel that you've got that, there is that no competition. There's not really the egos within the business, shall we say. Everybody sort of feels free to share what they've and being, I think as well, Ross, is that the other things that we sort of see is that people will see and show where they've failed as well. So they will sort of say, I did this and it absolutely fell on its backside. And if you want to do it, it's fine. But this was my learning points from it. People are happy to share that. And I love that aspect of it as well, that people don't always, not just talking about, oh, I've done this month and I've written this much amount of business and I've done this, and this, which comes part of it, but ultimately it's also about, well, this is where I failed too, and it's having that safe space where you're thinking, actually, I did this, and people aren't afraid to talk about where they've failed. I'm happy to talk about I've made some absolutely monumental mistakes during the last 9 years of being self-employed, but that's part of growing and enjoying doing what you're doing. So, yeah, culture's a sort of big thing with that as well.
No, for sure. I mean, I think I have been guilty of sharing numbers and things in the past within the group, but it's always with the intention, and it genuinely has always been with the intention. Like, this is what can happen. It's been for support, or people to say, like, yeah, it's maybe quieter this month, but well, I'm a big one for keeping figures so you can reflect back and review things, and that has always been the point of whenever I've shared that. It's because I've shared them when they've been good and when they've been less good, and but
Yeah,
it's just to show patterns, and my good and somebody else's good can be two different things. That is never the point. It's just about demonstrating progress and things that potentially can be learnt from looking back on what happened a year ago, or and things like that, and taking learnings from that. And the benefit of the academy from that point of view, beyond the support within the global network, if you like, or the overall network, is that I can be sharing that from the outset with people who are literally starting at nothing, and
yeah, no,
show, like, this is where it can go to. And but equally, there's parts that's not a straight line. There's ups and downs, and there's all sorts of things, challenges within that. So you're not alone in having experienced that. But this is how you get there eventually, with consistency and knowledge and everything else that you need to do. It's not going to fall on your lap, and it's not a we're not supplying a ready-made business or anything like that. You need to work at
no.
your own business. It's just a framework and experience that's been there, done it, and hopefully can help others do the same.
No, I think no, you're right, Ross. I think regarding to the sharing the numbers aspect of it, if you look at my experience with the large networks, it's award ceremonies and always published in lights, the ones that are doing amazing. But actually, that doesn't, not everybody strives to be number one within the network. So when you, like, you put some context to it, as do the ARs, when they're talking about their numbers, it's not as though we're sharing those for the, oh, well done, and there's round applause and look how much Ross has done this month, or anybody else. Is very much around. So people want to understand, actually, if they've had a bad month, they want to understand, well, has that been the same for everybody else? And if it has, then they'll take a little bit of comfort in terms of, well, this is the industry and this is what's happened this month. And I've sort of not had a great month, and there's a few other people out there that's not had a great month. And then but there's no, like, you, when you share your numbers, it's not you just you're just giving those numbers as other ones do, to sort of say this is what I've done. Like, and you share the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's the sort of thing that, whereas with the large corporates, generally speaking, you don't see, you certainly don't, you might see, but you certainly don't hear from the individuals who have had a mediocre month, but it's been all right for them because they've had different challenges, different things going on. And, but it's just then putting some, what should this look like in terms of, I'm now 6 months in, what should my business look like in terms of written numbers? What should my pipeline look like? What should my lead generation look like? And it's just giving that, because it's you, like it's your business. It's not, you're not up there competing with anybody else. The only competition you've got is with yourself to make sure that you're achieving what you want to achieve, which is the most important part of this.
No, for sure. I mean, I was just thinking, probably a small seedling of the academy idea that we've obviously now developed was on occasion of sharing some numbers in one of our group sessions, and I'd done a certain amount of mortgages in a week, in a month, and that prompted other people within the network to seek help, or at least work out how was I processing, what was my process, and I was more than happy, and I did some video sessions, whatever, to show people like this is actually how I work, and it just kind of started like everybody has their own way of working, and it's not prescribed in any way, shape, or form, but we can probably all learn from other people, just seeing how they are doing it. And yeah, that was a benefit of sharing that, and it was nothing to do with the numbers per se. It was just like how, as a one-man band, so to speak, and I don't have any admin or anything, was I doing this, and its process was a part of that, and that's kind of part of how we can demonstrate how that can happen within the academy as well on a practical level. So yeah, there's always things to be learned, and people are at different levels and different objectives, but we can support them wherever they're heading. But at the outset, you need to know what you're doing. That's
Yeah,
really what
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
you're not going to get anywhere until you can actually do the job, so to speak.
Yeah,
And that's where I think other networks, or whatever, maybe fall down, is that's not what's, in some cases they're striving for growth and bums on seats, so to speak, and numbers of advisors rather than quality of advisors, if that's too harsh, or qualities of business. That's and that's not no reflection on the individuals. It's on um, the culture, I suppose, or
ex-
the objective of networks and things. And I've seen that many times, when objective is growth and just as many people in the door as possible to advise, rather than, and then some will stick, some will not.
yeah,
That again is definitely not what this is about. It's about the right people, um, and making it work for them, or helping it make work for them, rather than just simply, that's great, we've taken on 10 advisors this week, month. That's not
exactly.
of any interest to any of us. So,
No, no, definitely. And I think it's a really good point you've made that for you, for me, the individuals that we're working with and want to work with are the right individuals. It's not about us going, oh, we've had 10 people join the academy this month, or we've had one person join the academy. It doesn't really matter. It's about helping the right individuals who want to grow and create something that sort of, that means something to them. And it's like I say, it's not just purely about numbers. It's about the right attitude, about the right values, it's the right behaviors, and they have to fit within the culture of the. Like you talked there about the culture we have already, or you talked about, I labeled it with the word culture. That is very key for us in terms of who we are as a network, and key for us as who we are as a business. That it is about the right individuals bringing, enhancing, and fitting in with the culture that we have already. It's not about somebody who will just sort of, well, we know they won't fit with our culture or our values, but we're just worried about numbers. And I've been there. I have been in that place, and that's one of the monumental mistakes that I've made in the past. When I have been, like a long time ago, I was just, it was just about numbers. That's all I was worried about: numbers, numbers, numbers. Whereas now it's very much around, yeah, we just want to work with the right individuals that have the right values, that work the way that sort of fits with us in terms of the goals and aspirations that we have. And like I say, it doesn't matter whether you are sole trader and always want to be a sole trader, or want to have that X amount of advisors. It's all about you as a business owner who has the right values for. certainly for me, that is one of the key things, really.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm proud to say that I my business that I wanted to build was on a relatively low volume uh, business because I give a very personal service to my mortgage clients, and that's what my business is built on, referrals and all the rest of it, and word of mouth, and it works great for me. But I'm no interest in churning out thousands of mortgages a month or whatever, or hundreds of mortgages. It's really not ever been about that. And the academy is similar. We practically it's not possible to deliver what we're aiming to deliver here, and the one-to-one support if there's 10 people coming in every week. It really is, that's just not practically possible, and it wouldn't be fair on those individuals, never mind any pressures it would put on ourselves. So it's very clear that this is a bespoke personal support
Hmm.
training system, whatever you want, academy. You can word it however you like. It's not that there'll be multiple people at any one time. It's about individual support, and in order to deliver that to the level that we want to, and to get people to where they want to be, it can't simply be a kind of cattle marker, whatever it's called,
No.
or just churning, which is perhaps what happens elsewhere. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's important that it's that personalised experience.
Absolutely. So let's just so we've gone through a little bit about the academy, explained about the sort of the timescales and the program and sort of the support and everything like that that people have. And there's no end to this. It's not sort of like you don't get a certificate at the end of it and get yourself a badge and then thank you very
No.
much kind of thing. It's like an ongoing thing. So let's bring it back, like I said I would. So if I'm sort of sat listening to this podcast, sat watching the podcast thinking, I want to know more about this. What does sort of the first sort of part of the process look like between? So I'm thinking this is something I want to look at, something I want to know more about. We'll explain how people reach out in a second, but what does that initial process look like?
Well, in the first instance, generally get in touch with typically yourself, Craig, in the first instance, but obviously I'm open to people contacting me directly as well, and having an initial chat. There's no harm in that, and there's never any blockages to that. Just
Hmm.
to see where people are at, what stage they're at. Obviously, in the first instance, we are looking for people who have already got their CMAP. It's not starting without
Yeah.
CMAP. You need to have got your CMAP and have a clear uh, desire to be setting up your own business ultimately on your own brand and so forth. Again, rather than being just operating with under a firm. So, but reaching out to us in the first instance, then typically having a chat, usually with yourself, Craig, I think initially, and then thereafter with myself in a separate chat, just to get to know each other and see how we can work together and deal with any questions at that. And then there is a kind of compliance process which you might pick up, or there's an actual procedure that has to be gone through to allow acceptance onto the academy. Just as with any financial services, you go through a certain kind of due diligence, whatever, to come on board, and then we take it from there.
Hmm.
There's no uh, great interview process as such. It's just about having chats and seeing if we're the right fit for people, and vice versa. But there's no nothing much more beyond that, and then we get on with it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think I think it's important that people feel that they can either sat listening to this, sat watching this, thinking, I want to know more about it. I think it's important that they can reach out to either one of us, so they might feel more comfortable reaching out to you because you are at the coal face, shall we say, in terms of from a Yorkshireman sort of saying. I don't know if that's a Yorkshireman
Yep.
saying, but you are sort of, so they may have a few questions around that, and you then start the process with you, and then I get involved a bit further down the line, or vice versa. People reach out to me first, and then you will get involved with this. I think the things like you say, it is very much around a chat with Lou. Sort of, it's around sort of understanding not only what we offer as a within the academy and the network, but also as well about that individual having the right values, aspirations, and yeah, values is key really. So yeah, so I think that sort of sums up the academy, sums up sort of where we're at with the academy. So if you are thinking about wanting to know more, then reach out to Ross, reach out to myself vi- through our LinkedIn profiles. I'll copy both in profiles onto the podcast note. So or any questions you've got, just yeah, just fire away, and we'll arrange sort of our conversations from there. But I think we've covered everything there, Ross. Is there anything else that we want to add before the end of it?
No, I think we've certainly covered everything. Yeah, I think yeah, we've been on a good hour and we've managed to fill it.
Yep.
um, hopefully not with too much waffle, but yeah, there's opportunity there, and I guess my thing is, I'm an example of you can do this. You can build your own business. You can have the kind of work-life balance you want, and that's not to sell the dream because there's lots of hurdles and nightmares within it. But if you go in with your eyes open, which I think is important, then there's opportunity there. And certainly, what we're looking to do with the academy is just support people to do effectively what I've done and what others have done, and you too can be golfing, crossfitting, in between lots of other things. But
Work-life balance.
you can have that balance. You can have
The
that
work-life
balance.
balance, Ross. Yeah, the
Yeah,
work-life balance. So
not immediately maybe, but yeah, you've got, and that's an important part of it. And we do touch on that in the academy, that about having that balance and designing what business is it you want to have and how can we help support you to get to that point. So exciting
definitely,
times for sure.
definitely. Ross, thanks ever so much for agreeing to come back onto podcast. We might maybe not leave it sort of 2.5 years next time, but thanks ever so much for your time. Thanks for agreeing to come back on, and yeah, just giving a good account in terms of the academy and how that benefits a lot of people out there that are looking to get into an industry. So yeah, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, cheers, my pleasure.
Thanks for that, Ross. Thanks for agreeing to come back on the podcast and talking about Fear Academy. Great to get it back on, and probably won't leave it as long next time. So, yep, if you're thinking about becoming a mortgage broker and looking at find out more about Fear Academy, they can get in touch with Ross or I through LinkedIn or any other means, and we'll have a chat with you about what it is, get into a bit more detail, get into more detail about the program, commercial aspects of it, and all that kind of thing as well. So please feel free to get in touch. If you listen to the podcast, liked it, as always, please leave a review. Please share it with other brokers. And thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And as always, please do not forget to run your own race.